Julia Sand, letter number 16. August 24th, 1882. My friend, how good you were to come and see me after all, and how badly you were repaid for it. But that is the usual fate of goodness. I am afraid you had what shall I call it? A very stiff visit, which was a pity, for my family are not given to stiffness. But, you see, you took them quite by surprise. And do you know they had the coolness for finding fault with me for not entertaining you more agreeably? My brother said I was like the man in the Arabian Nights, who got the big genie out of the vase, and then was so frightened he wanted to put it back again. But that is not true. I did not want to put you in your carriage and send you home again. I felt much more like putting some of the rest in a carriage and sending them out for a moonlight drive. However, you have taken all the vanity out of me. I thought, if you did come, it would be to see me. But now it is quite evident that it was my mother, sisters, brothers, and nephew in whom you were interested. All summer our house is open, but we very rarely all are in it. Of the 10 days you were in town, you could not have hit another when so many of us were at home, of all hours of the day, one when you could be more certain to find us all in the parlor. But I am glad you had your way, and perhaps it is quite natural that you should give them the preference. They are wiser and gooder, and never said anything ugly to hurt your feelings. In fact, my nephew said you were handsome and looked about 40. What nonsense! And my sister thought you conversed exceedingly well. But none of them were conscious of your compliment. They really thought you came to see me, to scold me, perhaps, and that I was so cowardly that I made them sit there and talk to prevent you having a chance. But that was slander. If you had come any morning or afternoon, for a week before, when I expected you, you would have found me in long white robes, like patients on a monument, waiting to be scolded. If you had come any evening early, for a week before, when I did not expect you, you would have found me in short white robes, alone with my little nephew, willing to be scolded. Yet in the twilight, looking so like the child angel in the American Baron that I could not possibly have done it. But even coming as you did, when I was tired, cross, had given up all thought of seeing you, had gone into mourning out of respect to the weather, had disdained roast beef and scorned peach pie, was on the lounge, vowing I would never write another line to that horrid man, at the same time wondering who that gentle-voiced Episcopal minister in the front parlor might be, till a word or two in his conversation caused me to jump up suddenly and find out. Even under all these trying circumstances, I endeavored to give you an opportunity to say anything dreadful that you chose, and you would not avail yourself of it. I asked if you were fond of music. You said, reasonably. What an unreasonable answer. If you had said irrationally, I would have made my sister and brother sing a long trio from some German or Italian opera. And when they were embarked on the high seas, you might have argued, scolded in fact, picked up the chairs and thrown them at me, and no one would have noticed it, providing you calmed down in some time to say, oh, how beautiful at the end, with a clear idea whether it was Mozart or Meyerbeer that you were applauding. Was I really frightfully unjust to you? I am so glad and so sorry. Glad that it was a mistake, sorry that any mistake of mine should have pained you. But you must realize that it is difficult for me to know just what to do and what not to believe in the papers. It is never easy for a woman to trace all the motives that may lie back of the printed words. It is doubly hard for me, because for 5 years I have been so cut off from the world, I have not met the people who could help me. You said you would like some time to tell me the real truth on several points, in regard to which I had false impressions. If the opportunity comes, I hope you will. Nothing would give me greater pleasure. But I have no desire to live in a little clique and hear the same opinions reiterated every day. I like to know people as different from each other as possible. And every chance I want to hear both sides. More than anything else, I care for the truth. But I did not like what you said just when you were leaving. Firstly, it was fearfully mean, for it left the bystanders to imagine that I had accused you of being an angel or something of the sort, when you know that I have never for a moment been under any such hallucinations. Nexity, it hardens you to say such things. Thirdly, it is a bad influence on others to hear you say them. And fourthly, it is not true. There is no such thing as standing still or remaining the same. Stagnation means deterioration. Not all of us are given to introspection and setting up moral milestones to mark our moral progress. But would it be fair then to say that there is no progress? Sometimes we progress slowly, sometimes rapidly, and much depends on circumstances to develop or repress certain qualities in us. But it is by our opportunities that we will be judged. The presidency puts a man terribly to the test. If he has fine qualities, they will shine with double brilliancy. If he is commonplace, it kills him. What has Grant been good for since, except to eat dinners? Will Hayes ever be heard of again, unless at a Sunday school festival? It has not killed you yet, and will not, unless you, at some important turning point, deliberately choose the wrong path. Letting aside all can't bring about sudden conversion. I hope you do not understand me as believing in that, and thinking simply of what it is to meet a great emergency, to rise to it, or to fail. Are you not wiser and better than you were? Look back on the past year. Did you ever in your life work harder? And has not almost all that work been for others? Even in your pleasures, have you not considered more what you could give than receive? Have you not had larger thoughts on in your mind? When vice president, you had no dignity to keep or to lose. Forgive me for saying anything so hateful, but it is true. As president, as so far as the world knows, you have never lost your dignity once. Opponents have been forced to admire you. You have done better than friend or foe expected, and it is your honor that it is so. You should not deny it and be ashamed. You should be proud of it, I would say, only that it is humility, not pride, which marks all true greatness of soul. There is something more I want to say to you, but will not now. Why should you be taught to death when off on your holidays? Besides, if I argue with you to prove that you are better than you think, perhaps you will forgive me. But if I should argue on exactly that opposite tack, perhaps you might not. So I'll give you time to rally from your malaria before I find fault. Am I not generous? Do you know, though I was very glad to see you, your visit left a rather sad impression on me? It seemed to me that you were not well, that you were very weary and worn out. You must not lie too much on your good constitution. There are so many strains that it must bear, you ought to avoid all that are avoidable. You ought not to keep your malaria a secret and endure it so patiently. It is a disgrace to the country that the White House should be so unhealthy. The sooner people understand it, the better. If Congress will sit in summer, could you not have a cottage in some healthful locality 5 or 10 miles out of town and attend to business from there? And if, when you are in New York, people will ring your doorbell all day and night, which is enough to give you brain fever, why not have the wire detached from the bell, and let the populace pull the handle as much as it pleases, a servant being near enough to hear that sound and attend to your callers, without your being disturbed so much? I felt so sorry. I wanted to do something for you, did not know what. Or rather I did know, but is anything more unnatural than to be quite natural? If I had said, do lie down on the sofa, no one will speak to you for an hour, and as soon as you are rested, you must have some dinner. You would have thought I was demented, would you not? And even if you were tired as a tramp and hungry as a traditional beggar, you would have exclaimed, thanks, no, in amazement. So you sat up and talked, and were talked to, had some of that melancholy beverage called claret, in a sherry glass, our waiter probably having lost his head in delight at seeing you, and then a long drive home. I am afraid, your visit to me being a sort of last straw, after a whole summer of burdens, you will have me associated in your mind for ever and ever with annoyance and fatigue. Is it so? Please tell me, but not now, when you are rested. Hoping that your visit to Newport will do you a great deal of good, yours sincerely, J.I.S.